All right, so I decided to go live real quick instead of actually just setting up my whole film equipment and actually filming a video, just because honestly it's just legitimately more convenient and quick and streamlined. Because I was cooking breakfast and was just doing some emails and responding to some comments and had some thoughts that I wanted to share real quick via live. So I'm not actually going to answer any questions or do that right now. Basically just filming in this capacity because it's easier and more efficient for me. So what I'm going to talk about is basically something that I see quite a lot, which is a few things. One is people confusing spirituality type stuff with healing and self-help and psychotherapy. And secondly, turning spiritual type stuff into commodities or treating it in a very sort of capitalistic kind of way. Very entitled, ridiculous kind of manner. And the third is basically wanting to achieve high level things like, let's say, be programming in quantum computing or doing high level quantum mathematics, but you can't even add 1 + 1 and you don't even know your basic numbers 0 through 9 or 10. That's a really common thing. So turning spiritual type stuff into self-help or psychotherapy or some healing thing, turning it into some commodity and treating it in some manner where like, I want this so I should have it, meaning like, I want these shoes so I should have them because I have the money and I deserve them. And thirdly, basically trying to do high level things before we can even understand what 1 + 1 even is. So generally the advice and the solution to all of this is in many ways forgetting about all of that stuff, putting it aside, putting it in perhaps its correct place, and actually sorting out our life first. Or in other words, getting our shit actually together. Getting our shit actually organized. Meaning our basic day-to-day life functions, meaning our actual health, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and being able to operate at a high degree of efficiency, proficiency, and effectiveness in these areas. And if those things are not in place, then we can't really do anything else more beyond that, because even if you just use something as simple as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's implicit within there. The other side of it is something I heard recently, which is if you can't govern your immediate environment effectively and efficiently, then there's really no hope for you to be able to govern anything greater or bigger than that. And this is generally the things that people don't want to do and don't want to hear, but is actually what is important and what is valuable and meaningful and create the biggest changes and transformation. Because oftentimes people want grandiose solutions to really ridiculously simple problems. And they will take these very simple problems and make them grandiose, make them transcendental, make them all of these things, when in reality they're just small things that can typically and often be resolved and sorted out by just getting their actual shit together in a really basic, mundane manner. Like one example is, one thing that people ask me about all the time is like this whole no-fap thing, which is, there's a spectrum obviously, but generally the underarching idea is like avoiding sex, avoiding masturbation and these things, which is obviously, if people are coming from a place of excessive porn consumption and excessive masturbation, then yeah, that makes sense. But it's really still kind of missing the point, because it's just going into denial and putting some evaluative judgment and saying, oh, this thing is bad, or it's a drain, or I need to work with this magical jing or ojas energy, and I'm going to channel this primal force into more creativity and do these things in my life, which is probably a lot more complicated and grandiose and exhausting than it really needs to be, perhaps what would be more beneficial and useful in the long term is actually learning to relate to human beings in a healthy way, learning to actually connect with other people, learning to actually be in touch with our own feelings and treat ourselves with some degree of respect and some degree of kindness, and being able to honor our appetites and our desires in a way that is healthy and harmonious. Not just deny them or say that they're bad or evil, or blame women, or blame porn, or blame society, or blame our animal nature, or blame our desires, or blame all of these things. When in reality, it's can be something much more simple, basic, and mundane, but people want to like spiritualize it or make it grandiose, when in actuality it's like saying, I want to be a concert pianist, and the way I'm going to become a concert pianist is by doing deadlifts. It's like those two things are not the same, and they will never lead to the same place. And telling yourself that they will is called denial and just flat out untrue. So that's just a, whoops, just dropped my little stand thingy, so I got to hold my iPad now. So that's just one really, really good example. Another big example is people will want to be like, oh, how can I do meditation and transcend this reality and tap into my essential spiritual nature and achieve enlightenment? It's like, there's so many things wrong with that question. And it's not even the right question to be asking, because generally what these people need is to actually get their life in order. And generally what I'm saying is that if you actually can start to get your relationships in a better place, get your immediate environment, the place you live in, more harmonious, then generally a lot of health stuff will sort of take care of itself. So like another example of this is people will have an issue and be like, oh, well, is there an herb for this issue? Or like, what do you recommend for this issue? Or like, what yoga should I do? But it's like, well, maybe don't eat so much sugar all the time. Maybe maybe have a social life. Maybe clean your room. Maybe sort out your life in this basic way, and then this thing that you're experiencing will probably go away. And you don't need like an herb to take it, or a supplement, or a shamanic initiation, or a mantra. You could actually just do this simple thing. It would actually help resolve the actual thing that you're dealing with. And this is just a weird thing that really comes up quite a lot. And I'm speaking from many angles, from my own journey as well, from seeing my own progression of my own mindset, from things from where I started to where I am now, from conversations that I've had with teachers of mine, from things that I see in like comments, people that I talk to, things that I talk to people via email, consultations, all these things that I'm doing. For some reason I'm like choking and dying right now, but it basically just comes down to sometimes actually just re-examining those simple things, which I've talked about in many different videos. So the other point is that if you don't have a solid foundation, so the foundation in this case would be your body, your health, your sense of power, your sense of control, your sense of being effective, your willpower, your clarity of thought, your clarity of perception, your degree of actually understanding yourself and understanding your situation. If those things are not in place, which for most of us they aren't, especially if we're interested in a lot of these alternative out there type things, then if you try to do something outside of that, so a clear example is you don't have any of these foundations in place, but you think you're gonna like just skip over all of that and get into psychedelics. Well, the vast majority of time, if people are gonna get into those things on a habitual, chronic basis, they're gonna create more problems for themselves. They're gonna make their health worse. They're gonna make themselves less mentally stable, less effective in the world, and then eventually they'll end up in a place where they're too weak, too unhealthy, too imbalanced to actually function or do anything. But the label will be like, oh, well, I'm just like real spiritual and I just evolved, and I'm just sensitive. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm intuitive. I'm empathic. I'm just tuned into all these vibrations and all these different spectrums of consciousness and experience and dimensions and angels and deities and all these beings. I'm just tuned into all this stuff. So that means I can't do all these other things because I'm so spiritual. That's called, I'll just say that basically what that actually is a sign that you're really unhealthy. You're really imbalanced. Your blood is deficient. Your chi is deficient. Your adrenals are probably fatigued. Your kidneys are probably fatigued. And you've made a lot of really wrong turns and harmed yourself in a pretty significant and potent manner. Another example of this is like, like I'll hang sometimes with people and they'll be drinking tea or something. And they're drinking and like, oh, I'm feeling all these like energies and all this stuff's moving, and I feel like healing happening in my mind, and then I'm connecting with my inner child, and I'm connecting with star energies, and I'm doing all these things, and just from this tea. Well, generally what they're probably experiencing is they were already unhealthy, meaning their blood was deficient, it was very thin, it was very weak, they were probably cold, they were probably really lacking in vitality. They probably don't eat very much. They don't eat regularly. Their digestion is compromised. So they're already in a weak, deficient state. They drink this thing, which is thinning their blood more, stimulating them more, depleting their adrenals more. So they feel actually, they're getting less healthy. They're getting less vital, but they're labeling it as like a spiritual thing or like a chi experience, when in actuality it's taking them in the wrong direction. And this is not a personal attack. This is just pointing out a common dynamic, a common pattern that is within all of us. This is a human natural characteristic where often what happens is we get locked in a disease pattern or a pathology, and the only thing that feels normal or good to that pathology is more pathology. And to go outside of it feels bad, feels wrong, feels whatever. Which is why, you need outside opinions. So it's another thing that can happen, especially now because we have so much information, that people are already kind of pathogenic, they're already sick, but they can read 100 different opinions about why that is and 100 different explanations. It's chakras, it's kundalini, it's Chinese medicine, it's Jing, it's Qi, it's Shen, it's angels, it's synchronicity, it's astrology, it's a series writing. Like there's all of these manners of confusion, but in reality they don't broach what's actually going on, which the vast majority of the time it comes down to something very basic, very simple, very tangible, very accessible. Building the foundation, actually developing a strong base, and actually developing proficiency in our actual life in a very kind of mundane, basic manner. And the other part of this is that the pathogenic mindset typically just wants pathogenic pathogenic role models. So what you have is a bunch of gurus who themselves are very unhealthy and generally psychotic and probably sociopathic. And they're probably doing the facade of being, childlike or eccentric or in tune with subtle vibrations or above things or detached. All of these manners of facade and fakery, but that's not actually the case. Like the 5 to 6 people that I've met in my life that I consider teachers, that are actually skilled, that are actually have attainments, have none of those qualities. They are the sharpest, most precise, effective, strong, powerful people that I've ever met. And this was something that was a bit of a shocker to me because coming from the world that I'm talking about, it took me many years to actually wrap my head around and sort of get over. So long story short, what I'm saying is basically actually setting aside all of this esoteric, grandiose, complex, like nonsense, or it's not nonsense, it's just basically perhaps not the right thing at the right time. And to me, on a personal opinion level, it does seem like nonsense, because I listen to people talk, I communicate with them, and I can feel my head, I can feel the weight of their of their mindset, and I can feel fatigue. I'm just like, oh man, that's so much work, that's so much stress and energy and tension and anxiety that you have wound up there, that you're carrying around, that is not necessarily that useful or effective. So what I'm saying is actually setting that aside a bit and actually sorting out our basic day-to-day life functions in a real mundane, tangible, relatable way. And realizing that sometimes we generally make things more complicated than they need to be, more difficult than they need to be, and that sometimes problems can have simple solutions. And perhaps we need to focus on actually building a base, building a solid foundation of health and clarity and mental wherewithal. Because it's like, if you're going to try to do anything high level, but you haven't developed these qualities, you're basically trying to, like, let's say you're trying to carve high-grade sushi with a plastic butter knife. It's not going to work. If you're going to carve high-grade sushi, you need a very precise tool, and you need decades of training to do that adequately. So it's a simple principle and pattern and dynamic which is true in many other areas of life, and is often pretty much understood by people in those arenas, meaning anyone who realistically wants to achieve mastery or high-level skill in the world understands these things. But for some reason out here on the internet, people want to achieve the same things, but they don't yet have the same understanding of what is actually required and what is actually it takes to achieve these things. So anyways, that is basically what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's a bit longer than I actually had anticipated, but I just wanted to pop on in live instead of just having to go through the extra 20 minutes of time to set everything up and film and edit and render and upload. Just do it live, and it's actually just a bit easier for me, but it's a bit early for me also. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. So yeah, in closing, I can say that definitely if people actually listen to the simple advice that I give pretty much all the time, which is like, sleep and wake on a regular basis, go to bed early, wake up early, eat regular meals a day, 3 times, don't skip meals, don't go long periods of time, exercise and move on a regular basis, actually develop some healthy relationships that are rewarding and fulfilling. Stop beating yourself up so much. Stop spending hours and hours a day consuming information that you don't use or can't put into action. And actually, simple stuff like that, which actually makes a huge difference and can help a lot of health conditions. Because again, you need to be able to regulate these basic functions before you can regulate anything higher or bigger or larger outside of that. But and the reason why I say these things and I make these videos is because I frequent these worlds. I've been to festivals, I've been to events, I've been to so many different manifestations and gathering points of these worlds, whether it's medical schools or hippie festivals or tea festivals or martial arts things or any spectrum of anything in between. People are missing these details and missing these facets, so they're not able to even attempt anything beyond that. So it's very important and very beneficial things that I think could be helpful. But anyways, I need to go finish cooking my breakfast and eat said breakfast and get on with my daily routine. But thanks for watching this live stream / video, and I'll talk to you soon.